Hey hackers, Blue Cosmo from CCS here. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show you guys how to install FlareVM. Flare is basically the Kali Linux of malware analysis and development. It basically allows us to kind of test malware, run malware, analyze malware, and kind of just see how certain programs run in the Windows operating system. It will allow us to kind of do some more malware oriented videos on the channel because that is how I got into malware. And I got into hacking through malware. But yeah, so let me show you guys how to get this installed on your computer so we can go ahead and do some more stuff. So you guys can check out my screen and you can see that the first thing you'll need is VirtualBox. If you don't know what VirtualBox is, basically allows you to run virtual machines. You don't want to install FlareVM on your host Windows computer because then you're just be installing malware, then you can't use your computer the way you used to. Just get it on a virtual machine, and we're going to use VirtualBox for this tutorial. You can use VMware, but you have to pay for snapshots, and no one wants to pay for anything, right? Use VirtualBox. It's a lot easier, lots more simple, and yeah. So the next thing you're going to want to download is the actual FlareVM repository. Here is FlareVM, and I'll have all the links that you'll see in this video in the description, of course. But this is the Windows 10 virtual machine we're going to want to use. You can click on that if you want to. It'll just take you to this page where you can select the MS Edge on Windows 10 x64, and then we're going to select it for VirtualBox, and you can download that zip folder. Once you get that zip folder, you're just going to want to unzip it and put it somewhere that you want to have it be easily accessible. So that way we can use it within our VirtualBox. So now that we have VirtualBox open, you can simply hit import, and we're going to import that OVA file you just downloaded from the Microsoft website, right? So you're going to hit wherever you have it saved. I have it saved in my ISO, but you should have it be saved in your downloads folder, and you'll see that MS Edge Win 10 OVA that you just downloaded off of the website right here, right? So we're going to hit open on that one, and go ahead and hit next, and you can change any settings you want in here. I usually make this about 2, and then I'll usually make this about 8 gigs of RAM, so 8196 I believe. And yeah, that should be good, so you can go ahead and hit import. While that's installing, something to note with the virtual machines on Windows is that they only last for about 90 days, right? And they have this default password for the account you import. So something to note is that when we first install it, we will need to take a couple of snapshots, just so that way after those 90 days we can revert back to the original point before we activate Windows, so that way we don't have to keep reinstalling everything. All right, so we can go back to our virtual machine and we can see that it is done on MS Edge Windows 10, right? Of course, you can call this whatever you want. In fact, in the settings, I'm going to go ahead and call this Flare. You can call it FlareVM, you can call it Flare, you can call it Windows, it doesn't really matter. You can call it basically whatever you want, right? Something we're going to need to do is in our system, in our display section, we're going to crank that up to 128 megabytes and then hit that enable 3D acceleration. We'll need that later when we are trying to have a full screen interface with our virtual machine. Something else we're going to need to do is go to shared folders, and you're basically going to need to add a shared folder. So I'm going to add a folder I already have onto my computer, but feel free to create any folder on your computer that you want to have be shared with your virtual machine. I have a shared folder already, so I'm going to hit open, and I'm going to have it auto mount as well. So we can go ahead and hit OK and start the virtual machine. So now we are here on our Windows virtual machine, and we can see that we need to enter a password. The default password is on the website right here, password with a 0 RD exclamation point. So we can go ahead and type that in as our password, capital PASSW 0 RD exclamation point, and hit enter, and we should be able to log in fine. And we can go ahead and let that start up. You'll see we have an interface with a bunch of weird text in the background. Feel free to read it over, kind of just giving you information about the virtual machine. So in the devices section, you can actually put the shared clipboard on if you want to, just to make things easier to copy and paste. But what we do need to do is actually go ahead and open up our File Explorer, and you'll see on this PC in our shared folder, you will have whatever you put in your shared folder. Make sure on your host computer, feel free to go to your file explorer and move your FlareVM download into your shared folder. So when you go on Firefox and you get this Flare VM repository, feel free to put it in your shared folder so that way your virtual machine can now access it. So we can go back to my virtual machine and go ahead and see we have this Flare Tech VM here. I'm going to move the Flare VM into my downloads, just so that way it's easier to access, right? And before we actually install Flare VM, we're going to need to take the snapshot around here, right? So let's go ahead and take the first snapshot. Take snapshot. I'll just call this Windows initial, and we'll say initial Windows before activation, right? We can hit OK and let that snapshot save to the computer. All right, so I can close this and power off the machine. We'll hit OK. All right, go back to our virtual machine, go into the settings, and then in our storage, we can add the disk VBS right here, or VirtualBox, guest editions, hit choose, and okay. Start the virtual machine back up. All right, we should be back in here. So you can go into your file explorer and go ahead and go onto your this PC section. You'll see the VirtualBox right here, and then click on AMD 64, yes, and just let this install into the computer. We can hit next, install, and then install. All right, reboots. So once it boots back up, I'm going to shut down the virtual machine. So we can go ahead here, power off the virtual machine, and go back to our virtual machine interface. Once we're here, go ahead and hit File, then hit Virtual Media Manager, and then on your Flare virtual machine, wherever you have it, mine's right here, feel free to change the storage length. It needs to be higher than 40 gigabytes, simply because VMware or FlareVM requires at least 60 gigabytes. So I'm going to put about 80 gigabytes in here just to make it easier, but put as many over 60 as you want. So we can hit apply, hit close, start the virtual machine back up, and if we do our right control and F, it should be able to go into full screen with no problem. Let's go ahead and get started and actually start installing FlareVM. We can open up our file explorer, go in our downloads, FlareVM, and we'll have that pack, all those files in here. So we can go into our start menu, type in PowerShell, and then you're going to take PowerShell as a administrator. You can hit Alt-Y to bypass that, or just hit the yes, it doesn't really matter. Now that we are on the Windows PowerShell, we can simply do a CD into that directory. Then you're going to do a set tech exec and then hit tab. It should autocomplete, but if it doesn't, just type out set execution policy like such, and then bypass and hit enter. Now basically you're going to hit a capital Y, enter, and that will allow us to basically run the installation process with administrative permissions, right? And not having to worry about anything else that might happen. So if we list, we'll actually see this install.ps1 file here. So all you're going to need to do is a /install.ps1. You can tab to autocomplete and then hit enter. You have less than 40 gigabytes. We changed it. Windows is not going to recognize it immediately, but it's just going to be fine. But we can still do the installation process. So hit a capital Y and just skip over that, and then we can type in the password for our user, which is that default password of capital PASSW0RD exclamation point. And once you do that, the FlareVM installation process is pretty much done. Now this can take anywhere from 1 hour to 2 hours, so watch a movie while you wait. Just keep an eye on it, so that way if anything happens, you are there. But it's going to restart a couple of times. You might see some errors here and there, but ultimately it should work. If there are any errors, I suggest just trying to reinstall the FlareVM, like just try rerunning the install.ps1, and if that doesn't work, try a separate tutorial or reading the documentation and such. For me personally, it took me about like 6-7 times to get it working, but I finally found a way that works, and this is the way that I'm showing you now. So I do apologize if it doesn't work for you, but once this is done, I can actually show you guys what it should look. Alright hackers, so let's check out some of the cool stuff that you guys have been putting in the self-promo section of the Discord server. If you want to join the Discord server, it will be linked in the description as always, so you guys can join that. But let's go ahead and check out some of the cool stuff you guys have been throwing on there. So once your installation is done, it should look something like this. If it doesn't have the wallpaper and it still has your previous wallpaper with all the blue and white wording and such, as long as you see a Flare desktop folder with all these applications in it, then you are fine. It worked. You can simply just change the wallpaper. It should be in your display settings. Yeah, so that should be it. And now you have FlareVM. So now you can analyze malware and such. And anytime that once you get past those 90 days, you can simply just go back, revert to the initial, and then just reinstall FlareVM. It's only like a 1 to 2 hour process, so you can just watch a movie while you wait, like I mentioned, right? So yeah, that's about it for this tutorial, guys. Hopefully you guys were able to successfully install FlareVM. Yeah, so I appreciate you guys for watching this video. Hopefully it was something a little bit easier to follow through, because I know I followed like several tutorials on how to do this and not one of them worked for me, but I finally got something to work, so I'm showing you guys that now. But yeah, make sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. So stay happy, stay positive, and as always, happy hacking.